looking, throwing in the end zone. Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today we're going to be talking about the 49ers who made the NFLPA All-Pro team, injuries, players getting healthy, roster moves, Steve Wilks interviewing for head coaching positions, Adam Peters becoming the GM of the Washington Commanders, how rusty will Purdy be for not playing the last week of the season, and we will preview the divisional round matchup of the 49ers hosting the Green Bay Packers on Saturday night. In the plus section, we're going to be talking head coach firings, team openings, and I'm going to rank the openings from best to worst. We're going to give a review of the Star Wars book, Star Wars Alliances, featuring Grand Admiral Thrawn and Darth Vader, written by Timothy Zahn. More Star Wars news as the newest movie was announced, The Mandalorian and Grogu, what that means, and we will conclude making divisional round NFL picks. But, like always, it starts with the Niners, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners!
So with the 49ers coming off of a bye week, I guess I am as well. No podcast last week, and as I was looking at the NFL and 49ers landscape, obviously we had Super Wildcard Weekend, and we're going to talk about those results and make divisional round picks in the plus section. There wasn't really that much going on from a 49ers perspective for me to really justify an informative, podcast for everybody. But I think between the bye week, this week, looking to the game on Saturday against the Packers, there is more than enough to talk about. And it's going to start with the 49ers players who made the NFLPA All-Pro team. The first team All-Pro team players on the Niners: tackle Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, fullback Kyle Juszczyk, tight end George Kittle, and linebacker Fred Warner. Second team, wide receiver Brandon Ayuk and cornerback Charvarius Ward. So the 49ers had 7 players, first or second team, to make the All-Pro team. Trent Williams was obviously a lock. McCaffrey, with the year that he had, still should be up for consideration for NFL MVP, if not definitely Offensive Player of the Year. This is the first year, actually, that a fullback was nominated or made the All-Pro team, and that honor went to Kyle Juszczyk. Kittle, bounce-back year as an All-Pro, and then obviously Fred Warner, the best middle linebacker in the game. Ayuk, as a second-team receiver, should not be discouraged because only 2 receivers made the first team. So he is one of the 4 quote-unquote best wide receivers in the NFL per the NFLPA All-Pro team, and same with Charvarius Ward locking up his first All-Pro team selection nod. Now, there were only 3 players who were unanimous selections for their position: Tyreek Hill at wide receiver, Christian McCaffrey at running back, and Fred Warner at linebacker. Now, as I mentioned, with 7, the Niners were almost leading the pack in terms of teams with the most All-Pro nods. The honor actually goes to the Cowboys, who had 8. And look where that got them, bounced in the first round by the Green Bay Packers. So having great players on your team, having them be showered with accolades or recognized as an All-Pro for their greatness in a vacuum is fantastic. It's from this point forward, it's got to translate to on the field All-Pro-like production. And if that's the case, then the 49ers have not an easy path, but a clear path to the Super Bowl, and it's going to start on Saturday night against the Packers. But some good news, the Niners are getting healthy. Like any team, they're not 100% healthy. Everybody's banged up. The NFL is a long season. It's a grind. The bye week helped a lot of players not playing against the Rams, most notably Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Eric Armstead, who's still nursing some injuries, But that bye week was huge for a team that had a lot of people banged up. But wide receiver Juwan Jennings is out of concussion protocol. He is good to resume. Well, he's been resuming practices and football activities. He is a go for Saturday. McCaffrey's mild calf strain, good to go. Right guard, John Feliciano, or left guard, I'm not sure who he's going to be playing, or backup guard. He had some back issues, was day-to-day. He's okay now. Jair Brown, rookie safety, filling in for Talanoa Hufanga, twisted his knee a couple weeks ago. He's good to go now. Running mate to Sean Gibson tweaked his quad, did not play against the Rams in Week 18. He's good to go. Ambry Thomas, you know how I feel about him, had surgery on his hand, did not play against the Rams. He should be available for the Packers as well. And lastly, Danny Gray, second-year wide receiver, nursing a shoulder injury, seems to be healthy enough to participate, and his practice window has been opened, but he is still on IR, and there's no guarantee he's going to make the divisional round roster given the receivers the 49ers already have. There are some players that are dinged up and two at one position, at a single position, which could impact the Niners on Saturday. So Clelin Ferrell, defensive end, tweaked his knee, did not play last week and will, or maybe he was in last week and came out early. Either way, he's going to miss the Packers game. Fellow defensive end Drake Jackson missed about the last month plus or more, maybe close to 2 months, with a knee injury. He was put on IR recently, maybe a month ago, sent a photo via either Instagram or Twitter where he came out of surgery, his knee was all bandaged up, and he was wearing a knee brace that I recognize because it looked to be a knee brace for patients who are just coming off of ACL reconstruction. Like he was in shorts. His leg was bandaged from his upper thigh down to above his ankle. I'm not saying he had an ACL reconstruction. The 49ers have not, to the best of my knowledge, come out and said what it was. It could be a meniscus cleanup. It could be something arthroscopic that he needed to get done. He's not coming back anytime soon. I would be shocked, even if the Niners make a Super Bowl run, that Drake Jackson will be available. So they're down two defensive ends this week against a Packer team who was not sacked at all against a very, very, very good Dallas pass rush, and a team that plays really well and really fast at home. Did not get to Jordan Love at all. We'll talk about what that's going to mean roster-wise. Now, in terms of not fully healthy but limited, getting some players back. So Eric Armstead, who's been gone for the past 5+ weeks with a knee and foot issue, has been limited in practice. They are optimistic he will play, and that'll be a boon in the middle to help stop that Packer running game. Dre Greenlaw has had some Achilles tendonitis the past month. Shanahan said that they went hard in practice on Monday, gave him Tuesday off, that he would be limited in practice today on Wednesday. Logan Ryan, backup safety, a groin strain. And George Odom, who was on IR and may be activated off it or able to play, had a bicep injury earlier on in the season, so he could be added to the divisional round roster. So getting healthier. I mean, Drake Jackson was on IR. You knew he wasn't coming back. Clelin Ferrell is really the only player then on the 53-man roster that will definitely be missing the Packer game. That's pretty good. Or I'm sorry, their 48-man active roster, because there's still no Talanoa Hufanga, etc. So they're almost as healthy as they could be heading into this Packers game. Now, there were some roster moves that were made. Let's go from most recent. So, given the Ferrell injury, missing the Packer game, the the 49ers signed defensive end Austin Bryant to the practice squad and released running back Jeremy McNichols. So that means your running back's going to be McCaffrey. Mitchell is obviously healthy, and Jordan Mason. They will not have a fourth on the roster. Even if they did, that fourth running back would not be active against Green Bay. They signed Austin Bryant with the intention of taking a look at him. Now, he was on the team to start the season. Got released early on, got placed on the practice squad. He's going to compete with rookie defensive end Robert Beal to see who would be the fourth defensive end active on the roster for Green Bay, behind Bosa, Chase Young, who's going to get, I think, a step up in snap counts, Randy Gregory, and either Austin Bryant or Robert Beal. And I would imagine they would have 5 defensive tackles active just in case Armstead's knee or foot acts up again. During the bye week, safety Taylor Hawkins, who had an interception against the Rams, who was elevated from the practice squad because Tayshaun Gibson missed that game, went on IR with a broken hand. So did Jason Verrett, who tore his knee up again, unfortunately, in practice. He's reportedly around the team, still at the facility, but he is done for the season, and he may need to call it a career. A very unfortunate, he is sadly the definition of an injury-prone player, but when you look at it, oh, no, I'm sorry, not his knee, it was his shoulder. I'm sorry, not his knee. But he's had an Achilles tear, 2 ACLs, now his shoulder. These, you can look at them as bad luck injuries, with your Achilles, your knee, you just plant, non-contact, things can tear. He was just going up to break a pass up, and he fell on his shoulder and needs shoulder surgery. He's done. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch love him. Is there the potential that he's on the practice squad next year? Sure. I mean, it'll give the legs another year to get healthy, or the Achilles, the knee, whatever. And the shoulder doesn't seem to be hopefully anything super catastrophic, but just someone that can't avoid the injury bug. You got to feel bad for him. And 2 players signed to the practice squad to take the place of Hawkins and Verrett. Cornerback Terrence Mitchell, who's been in league for about 8 or 9 years, and defensive lineman Sam Okiwanu will add another defensive line member just in case the Niners, say, get past the Packers and somebody gets potentially banged up. But they also do have T.Y. McGill and Spencer Wage as defensive tackles, so rounding it out with a third with Okiwanu. So moving on from roster moves, you may have seen the past couple weeks, Steve Wilks interviewed for the head coach position for the LA Chargers and Atlanta Falcons. And there was not an uproar, but nervousness on social media. What's going to happen if Steve Wilks leaves? Will they promote someone like Daniel Bullocks, who's the secondary coach, to become the defensive coordinator? Bullocks has been with the 49ers for 7 years. He understands the scheme, etc. The Chargers are not going to hire Steve Wilks. They just had a defensive coach in Brandon Staley. They are not going back to another defensive coach. No matter how strong of a leader of men Steve Wilks or another candidate, a defensive candidate may be, he's not getting hired. They're not hiring a defensive-minded coach. And as far as Atlanta goes, so they're coming off of Arthur Smith, who's an offensive-minded head coach. I don't think Steve Wilks is the fit there. Now, there's some rumors, we're going to get into it on the plus section, about Bill Belichick possibly landing there. I hate to say it, but it's a thing. I think for the Chargers and the Falcons, interviewing Steve Wilks was a way to satisfy the league's Rooney Rule, which mandates that teams interview at least one minority candidate before making a hire. And Steve Wilks thought of very highly in the league, had a good year as the 49ers defensive coordinator. Now, they slipped some in the overall rankings and the rush rankings and certainly the pass rankings when compared to DeMeco Ryans and the last year or two of Robert Saleh. And Steve Wilks may get an opportunity later on, but I do think this was a Rooney Rule interview. I think with other big names out there, Harbaugh, Belichick, Vrabel, Pete Carroll, if he wants to keep coaching, I think Steve Wilks winds up falling at the bottom of that list. And there may be other teams that are interested, but I don't foresee Steve Wilks going anywhere. I feel like he could be the 49ers defensive coordinator for as long as he wants to be, assuming he keeps performing. Now, someone who did leave the building, assistant GM Adam Peters, was hired as Washington's general manager. And there was some discussion that since John Lynch moved up to I don't know if his title is officially GM plus head of football operations, if they would have moved Lynch up and promoted Peters to full-fledged GM to keep him. Obviously, that did not happen. So they've lost their assistant general manager, which may or may not be something that bites them depending on, obviously it's the playoffs now. So you're focusing on the playoffs, who's in front of you. You're making some practice squad additions, nothing ridiculously major, and you have personnel that can help you out with that. But as we move into the off season and we're talking about free agents to resign, external free agents to bring on board, the draft, it's hard to quantify what Adam Peters' impact was. We know that, John Lynch and others thought very highly of him, and obviously so did the Commanders. That's why they made the hire. But this is going to be a position that will be filled, whether it is with an internal candidate, someone like a Tom Telesco. Martin Mayhew is with the Commanders. I'm not sure of his exact role, but there's been some discussion that would John Lynch bring him back for that assistant GM role with San Francisco. But just cleaning up some odds and ends in terms of staff interviews and hirings. Now, let's move back to players. And the question, that I want to ask, and we have some insight from Shanahan, is with Brock Purdy not playing the last week of the regular season against the Rams, will he be rusty? And here is, a few quotes per Kyle. Quote, "We pushed the heck out of Brock. Meetings, practice. I mean, we knew Sam Darnold was playing that whole game against the Rams, and Brock was still splitting reps with him in practice." So Sam and Brock split first-team reps leading up to that last game against the Rams just to keep Brock somewhat fresh. And the fact that Darnold didn't get all the first-team reps is irrelevant because it's a game that didn't matter at all. For the 49ers, it helped the Rams solidify the 6th seed, in which case they promptly went to Detroit and lost. Another quote from Shanahan. "So Brock got a good weekend. We just didn't want to put him out there in the first half of that game. He did miss the first half versus the Rams, but he got that whole weekend and he came back. He's been here. He's worked on his days off." Last quote. "We got 2 bigger practices last week than we do in a normal week, and Brock went out with the guys on Monday, did a bunch of stuff with them, and now we're going to get 2 practices in again." Brock seems like someone who is studious. He didn't I don't think he went back to Iowa or Arizona. I don't think he left San Francisco or the facility. He was practicing. He was getting work in with the rest of the team, players that needed rehab, like a McCaffrey and Armstead, a Feliciano, Jair Brown. He was around the team in the facilities, whether you're taking mental reps, and he was taking actual reps on the field. I don't have a worry that Brock is not going to be ready or rusty come the playoff game against Green Bay. But it's good to see that even during the week before the bye, he got work in, and then sounds like there was some work going on during the bye week, and obviously they're getting back to practice this week leading up to the Saturday night game. One other interesting note as it pertains to Brock Purdy and something that I read. So coming off of last season where the Niners lose in the NFC Championship game, Brock Purdy gets hurt, has a UCL repair. This bringing in Sam Darnold, the discussion of is there going to be competition between, Purdy and Lance? Is Darnold a real threat? What if Purdy doesn't, recover on time? And I was one of those people that was leery that he would be ready for week 1. And I thought there was a decent chance he might end up on the PUP list. And I'm glad that I was wrong. But then a curveball was thrown at me in an article that I read that said, yes, there might have been actual competition for Brock going into this season, but it was nobody on the roster. That potential competition would have been only Tom Brady. Shanahan talked to him in the offseason as he was rehabbing, saying, hey, even though he retired, we're going to see if Brady wants to play for us. And there was rumblings that offseason about, Brady there's been rumblings about Brady and the Niners for the past 2 or 3 off seasons, even when he went from New England to Tampa Bay. So there was something to that last off season that Shanahan was going to explore it. And here was Brock's quote. That meant so much to me. I remember him saying, if we can get Tom Brady, we're going to try to get him. And I was like, yeah, he's the GOAT. I get it. But something deep down inside me was sort of like, dude, I just showed you that I can play well in this system. And we were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. More than anything, though, I was like, all right, now let's go. You can understand, as competitive as anyone's going to be, you can understand if someone's going to bring in a Brady or another Hall of Fame level talent for your position. Much like, if I was Jets, the Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, I would be forthright and tell Robert Saleh, if Aaron Rodgers didn't run that team into the ground, like, hey, if Mike Tomlin's available, we're gonna kick the tires. Jim Harbaugh's available, we're gonna kick the tires. Belichick would never go back to the Jets. We're gonna kick the tires. I think that's okay to do. What has Robert Saleh proven? If you have an immediate upgrade, or that what you believe is an immediate upgrade, you do your due diligence. And yet Brock played extremely well. And if he wasn't hurt, if he wasn't coming off of UCL surgery, maybe Shanahan doesn't say that. I don't know. But even if he wasn't injured and they lost, to the Eagles or whatever, if Brady's available and willing for a year or 2, you have to look into it. You have to turn over as many rocks as you can. It was interesting to hear, glad to see that, Brock didn't take really offense to it. But if he's, if he's going to use that as a little chip on his shoulder now, just to, to further prove like I'm the guy. And I think Shanahan, we're talking 7 months ago, maybe 6-7 months ago that Shanahan said this. I think Brock has proven that he's the guy. Brock is the 49ers franchise quarterback. And that's also a phrase that people get too wound up about. Elite franchise quarterback. I'm on record saying that Mahomes is the only elite quarterback in the league. And I will stand by that. And then there's great quarterbacks. There's very good quarterbacks, above average, etc. Mahomes is the only one that is elite. The franchise quarterback is a term that gets thrown around way too much. And I see it about Tua, saying that, Tua is not a franchise quarterback for the Dolphins. And to me, it's semantics. To me, it's a couple things. They've been searching for a quarterback since Dan Marino. It's like the Browns. The Browns had to go in on Deshaun Watson. They gave a stupid contract, gave up too many picks, but they've been looking for a quarterback since Bernie Kosar. So we're talking, late 80s, early 90s. Marino, mid to late 90s. I think it was last year was maybe like 97-ish. 25 years they've been looking for a quarterback. And Tua runs McDaniel's system pretty well. Is he the biggest guy in the world? No. Does he have the strongest arm in the world? No. Did he put up a ton of touchdowns and have that offense humming? Yes. And did we really think that a warm weather team was going to win at Kansas City in subarctic temperatures? No. Tua Tagovailoa is the Dolphins' franchise quarterback. He fits what they're going to do. That doesn't mean he's a top 5 quarterback. I think he's top 12, top 13. Sometimes that's good enough. People get so fall in love so much with, if you're going to be a franchise quarterback, you got to be top 3. No. If I'm a team that's a franchise quarterback means I'm going to sign you for 4 or 5 years. I'm going to sign you to be the steward of my franchise for multiple years. If you sign Tom Brady 1 year, is he your franchise quarterback? No, because he's here for 1 year. He's a great quarterback, but he's not your franchise, your face of your franchise for the next 4, 5, 6 years moving forward. That's Tua. And people could knock Tua. I'm not going to say he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. He is the Dolphins franchise quarterback, and Purdy is the Niners franchise quarterback when he's able to sign after next off season. Let's move into the preview, though. Packers at Niners, 8 o'clock Saturday night. 49ers opened up as a 10-point favorite. I think it's gone down to 9.5. How did we get here? Obviously, the Niners have the bye. They are playing the lowest remaining seed in the playoffs, which is the Packers. They were the 7 seed, went to the number 2 seed Dallas and just steamrolled them 48-32. The Packers put up 415 total yards, no turnovers compared to Dallas's 2, including a pick 6. They only had 22 first downs versus the Cowboys 37. Cowboys put up over 500 yards of offense, so they outgained the Packers, but a lot of that was happening when it was 41-16 or when they were up huge and the Packers took the foot off the gas. Jordan Love, 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Aaron Jones on the ground, 118 and 3 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs receiving 151 and 1 score. They got to Dak Prescott, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, like I mentioned, 1 pick 6. Dallas, 0 sacks of Jordan Love. So the Packers, team that started out 3-6 and won 7 of their last 9. After losing to Pittsburgh, 23-19, to fall to 3-6, they beat the Chargers, the Lions, the Chiefs. So now they're 6-6, and people thought that they were going to run the table, that they might finish up 11-6 because of who they have upcoming. But instead, they lost at the Giants, at home to Tampa, and then finished up beating Carolina, Minnesota, and at home against Chicago, 17-8, or something like 17-9, to clinch a playoff spot. Aaron Jones, running back for the Packers, has run for at least 111 yards in their last 4 games, the last 3 regular season games, and their playoff win at Dallas. Now, before we go into who's on offense, who's on defense, we should look at overall rankings. I will say this. There's articles going back with now, the Packers are now the worst possible matchup for the 49ers. Should the Niners be scared of the Packers? Is Jordan Love a top 10 quarterback? Like, everybody chill out. The worst thing you can do in any sport is overreact to one game. Remember, I keep saying week-to-week league. Power rankings fluctuate based on, you could be the number 1 team and lose a game by 3 points in overtime and get dropped to number 5 because, now you lost and that team has the blueprint to beat you, yada, yada, bullshit, just need something to talk about. The Packers are who they are. They're a 9-8 team. They needed to go on a serious run when they were 3-6 to get into the playoffs. And literally midway through that run, after wins against the Chargers, not a great team, the Lions, and the Chiefs, they lost to the Giants and the Buccaneers. Giants are a terrible team. Tampa, obviously in the playoffs, but Tampa beat them in Green Bay by more than 2 scores. And then who do they wind up beating to finish up? Carolina, woohoo. The Vikings were on their 4th or 5th quarterback, and the Bears, who just aren't very good either. Going into Dallas, the Cowboys cowboyed. They did what we all knew that they were going to do. Even the most ardent Dallas fans who were outwardly saying, this is our year. We got the number 2 seed. We got 2 home playoff games. Maybe the Niners slip up and we can host the NFC Championship game. They did not look prepared. They were down 27-0 in the second quarter. They did not look prepared. It was impressive how the Packers won. It was a complete victory. I mean, there was no special teams, kickoff return, punt return, but Jordan Love had a good game. Aaron Jones had a good game. The receivers, defense got after Dak. Defense picked him twice, took one back. A complete victory. But it's one game. Are we going to automatically now say that the Packers against the Cowboys, that's who they are? That is who they are. They're not the 9-8 team that lost to bad teams, beat some okay teams, started out 3-6. And yes, you could say, momentum. They got on a roll. They won 7 of their last 9. You could also say that they just won, 4 of their last 6. If you want to start with their losses, you can cut stats any which way you want, but was it, Tony Dungy or Parcells or whatever that coach said, your record, you are who your record says you are. They're a barely above 500 team. Jordan loves playing some good football. They have some players. Let's go over them. On offense, Jordan Love at quarterback, running backs, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who did not play against Dallas. Not sure what his status is against the 49ers. At tight end, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Receivers, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and Christian Watson. On defense, Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith lead the way, 9 and 8 sacks respectively. Kenny Clark in the middle, Jair Alexander at corner. He was nicked up coming into the game with an ankle sprain. Seemed to re-aggravated against Dallas. We'll see if he's available. And Darnell Savage at safety, who took one of Dak Prescott's interceptions back to the house. Overall, during the regular season, this was a defense that produced 45 sacks and 7 interceptions. Let's look at rankings. Offensively, the Packers are the number 11 offense, number 12 passing, averaging 233 a game, 15th rushing, 112 a game, and 12th in points, scoring 22.5. Defense, they're 17th overall, 9th against the pass, allowing 207, 28th against the rush, allowing 128, and 10th in points allowed, allowing 20.6 points per game. So let's just stop there for a second. Jordan Love looked good against Dallas, and it was surprising given the secondary, the corners between Bland and Gilmore, the pass rush, how they threw it all over the field. And the Packers don't have any overwhelmingly super talented number 1 receiver, right? They have a bunch of number 2s and number 3s, to be honest. You know, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and Christian Watson. Watson is the closest thing they have to a number 1, but he's coming off of a hamstring strain. I think he only had 1 or 2 receptions against Dallas. Romeo Doubs had the huge game. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, nice pieces at tight end, but again, nobody overwhelming. But, Aaron Jones has gotten hot this past month of the season. This is a team that can spread it around. And depending on your outlook or philosophical bent, is that more dangerous than a team that has a number 1 receiver but doesn't have the depth around him to make the other pieces as viable, as dangerous? That could obviously go either way. But I think the 49ers also do have the pieces in the secondary and at linebacker to match up with Green Bay. And of course, there's always, for the lack of a better phrase, did the Packers blow their load against Dallas? Now, I believe after in the post-game interview that Jordan Love was saying they were playing loose. The Cowboys, even if it didn't look it on screen, they were uptight. They know the pressure that they have on them. Haven't been to an NFC championship game since 1995. Was it that the Texans have just as many or more wins than the Cowboys do in the playoffs since the Texans joined the NFL in 2002? So at least, it's Big H, not so much Big D anymore. It's H-Town. That's really the more successful playoff team. Did Green Bay just leave it all on the field? Did they play their best possible game against Dallas? And usually when that happens, especially for a very young team, and I think the Packers are the youngest team, or one of the youngest teams in the NFL, does that automatically mean letdown? Now, the competition is going to be a clear step over Dallas. And I don't care if any Dallas Cowboys fans are listening. I know Micah Parson on his podcast once said, I really don't think the talent difference is really that much between us and the Niners. Yeah, it is. You have some talented players. You have 8 All-Pros. The Niners have 7 All-Pros. But the way the pieces fit together and perform as units, offense, defense, and special teams, far superior to what the Cowboys bring to the table. The Packers can be dangerous, but again, is this their letdown game because of what they did and the energy used or the excitement, enthusiasm that they used at Dallas? And you can look at it and say, hey, we did it to the Cowboys. Now we can go in and do it to San Francisco. Maybe. But San Francisco's a more disciplined team. They're a better team offensively. They should be able to protect the ball better than Prescott did. And they will run the ball much better than the Cowboys did. The Cowboys basically abandoned the run midway through the second quarter because they were getting shellacked. And in some ways, even though the Packers do not have a great defense, I know a lot of Packer fans on social media want to get rid of their defensive coordinator. They hate their defensive coordinator. Probably like him a little bit more now after the Cowboy game, but they'll turn on him again if they lose to the 49ers and say the 49ers beat them by 17 or something. The Niners have the horses to play with Green Bay. And that's so stupid to say. The Niners are the 1 seed, the Packers are the 7 seed. Do I think it's going to be a cakewalk? No. But let's just go over the Niners stats. Niners are the number 2 overall offense, number 4 passing, averaging 258 a game, number 3 rushing, averaging 140. That's a key because the Packers are allowing 128 a game and the Niners are running for 140. Niners are number 3 in points scored, 28.9 a game. On defense, number 8 overall, 14th against the pass, 3rd against the rush, allowing 90 yards a game, and 3rd in points allowed, 17.5. Turnover differential, Niners are plus 10, Packers 0. There are even. Interceptions, the Niners have 22, the Packers have 7. So what are we going to be looking at this game? The biggest thing, honestly, is weather. Because it looks like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, each day, there's a 50 or 60% chance of rain. The only game that we saw Brock play in the rain was at Cleveland. Didn't look great, but still drove him down the field at the end, and Moody missed that field goal wide right to win it. Both, but, newsflash, everybody, both teams are going to be playing in the rain. Does it mean Jordan Love automatically is going to be a better wet ball quarterback? That would probably mean that maybe both teams run the ball a little bit more. The Packers can be gashed via the run. The Niners can get creative with the run, obviously with McCaffrey, Debo, line up in the backfield. On sweeps, they can bring Mitchell in, who had a good game week 18. They can bring Mason in to really pound on the D-line, second quarter, second half. I think the weather is going to be the biggest factor for this game. I think if the 49ers play their game, they don't turn it over, they don't lose. I mean, they can maybe lose the turnover battle 2-1, 1-0, and I think still win this game. I think Chase Young needs to step up in terms of snap counts. That's not on him. That's on the defensive coaches. They need to unleash Chase Young. A healthy Eric Armstead in the middle of that D-line would be a huge plus as well. Get after Love, who wasn't sacked against the Cowboys. Make him uncomfortable. And if you're going to do anything, take the run away. The Packers, much like any team, struggle when they can't run the ball. And their record with Aaron Jones under 100 yards is well under 500. That's not to say that, A.J. Dillon can't contribute to that, or maybe Jordan Love a little bit contributing with his legs. And that's something I'm curious to see too, right? What's the mobility that Jordan Love is going to bring? The Packers, I've watched enough Packer games. I'm not really seeing any or many read options, design runs for Jordan Love, or even him breaking the pocket when things break down. But that could be something that is woven into the game plan to keep the Niners defense off balance. Otherwise, San Francisco only missing Clelin Ferrell, and he's not as much a pass rusher as an edge setter. So that's going to mean Bosa and Chase Young might be having to pull double duty, not doubling up their snap counts, but being in on, first, second, third down. Some third downs are obviously, passing downs unless it's a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, to rush the passer, to set the edge, knowing that a Randy Gregory is only about 245 pounds. Austin Bryant isn't that big. Robert Beal isn't that big as well. So whoever those 4 rushers are, it may fall to Young and Bosa on those early downs to set the edge and not let Aaron Jones or potentially Jordan Love get outside. Offensively, I don't think for the Niners, I don't think there's going to be rust. I think they're going to be efficient. I think they're going to commit to running the ball. Now that Eli Mitchell is healthy, I'm curious to see what that split between McCaffrey and Mitchell may be, especially if it starts raining harder or the field gets to be a bit of a mess. And the Santa Clara field, where they play now at Levi's, has held up much better to rain than how Candlestick Park used to just turn into, like a mud slop where pigs would live or feed. The field holding up much better, but this is where you can get muffed punts, fumbles, obviously handling a slick ball. But I think getting healthy, Jair Brown's back, Gibson's healthy, the linebackers, you're getting Armstead back. Could potentially be getting Ambry Thomas back at corner, although if he's wearing a club on his hand, that really takes away any possibility of him getting any interceptions or wrapping up tackling. The O-line should be healthy. You're getting Jawan Jennings back. I think weather is the biggest thing that could derail the Niners. And if the Packers play lights out again, like they did against Dallas, if the Packers play that way, they will be a handful for any team and could beat any team, NFC or AFC, remaining in the tournament, because that was a very impressive performance. What are the odds of that happening again? Now against a better team, a team that is rested, a team with a better overall defense, a team with a much better and balanced offense. I think this is a game, again, all things being equal, with weather, turnovers, the Packers being ridiculously hot, that the Niners win right around the point spread, 27-17. So that concludes the 49ers section of the podcast. Stick around. We're going to be talking about NFL head coach firings, Star Wars Alliance, a book by Timothy Zahn about Grand Admiral Thrawn and Darth Vader, the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that is coming out. We'll make divisional round picks. Stay right here.
It's plus time.
So a bunch of firings, starting with Black Monday after the last week of the season's games, and we're just going to kind of run them through from most recent to, actually, this is in no particular order. I thought it was in an order. So the Seahawks parting ways with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll wanted to stay, and per an interview he did with a Seattle radio station, this decision was made by non-football people. They offered him a position in the organization, and Carroll is determining whether to take that or pursue head coaching elsewhere. The Tennessee Titans let go of Mike Vrabel. The Commanders, Ron Rivera. Falcons, Arthur Smith was gone. Chargers, Brandon Staley midseason. Panthers, same with Frank Reich. Raiders, fire Josh McDaniel midseason. Antonio Pierce has been interviewing for other jobs, but he might be the leader in the Raiders clubhouse. Patriots got rid of Belichick. Did hire Gerard Mayo. I'll get back to that in a second. The Bears are keeping Matt Eberflus, which makes you wonder what they're going to do with the number one pick. Are they going to keep Justin Fields? Because why would you keep a coach, I believe, on the last year of his contract and trust that coach to pick the next signal caller, even if it is a slam dunk and Caleb Williams is going to be picked apart between now and the day he is drafted? Any coaching staff would probably jump at the chance to draft Caleb Williams. So maybe it doesn't matter so much. But again, if you're going to do that, you might as well just cut bait with Eberflus, the offensive coordinator, maybe the D coordinator, Fields you want to trade, etc. But those are the teams that have openings. And I'm going to rank the openings now from worst to best. So worst, Carolina. David Tepper has a lot of money. Good for him. He's a meddlesome owner. He's a younger Jerry Jones. I don't think he knows much about football. I think Frank Reich is a highly respected football mind, and I think would have been a good coach for that team. And the fact that he was let go year one of a clear rebuild with Bryce Young at quarterback. I don't know what David Tepper or anyone was thinking. If he lost the locker room, if he slept with David Tepper's wife, I don't know what it was. What did you expect to happen trading assets away, including your number one receiver, DJ Moore, to get a quarterback who, like most quarterbacks, needs time? And what's killing the Panthers, or the perception of the Panthers, is CJ Stroud. They could have had CJ Stroud instead of Bryce Young, but there's no guarantee CJ Stroud performs the way he has in Houston if he's in Carolina. So hindsight's not even 20/20 on this. This is just a who knows situation, right? Niner fans, who knows if the Niners would have broken Aaron Rodgers if they had drafted him in 2005 instead of Alex Smith. And who knows what Alex Smith would have been if he went to the Packers and sat for 3 years. You can't just plug and play like that. So I think Carolina, no first round pick, meddlesome owner. They have some talent, not a ton. They do play in a division that they could maybe have a quick turnaround in with the Bucks and Saints. But I just think that's the worst opening. Next, Tennessee. Tennessee is like a who gives a shit team right now. Like I can't think of a more or less inspiring, exciting team that I want to watch. Derrick Henry had basically his farewell tour during his last game. He's not going to be back. Yes, you have Will Levis at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is going to be a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins was there for 1 year, but there's nothing sexy about that team. And I don't know if coaches are going for sexy, but at least for me, it's just such a blah team. Maybe living in the Nashville area is nice. Maybe you look at that division with Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Houston and say, hey, if we put a couple pieces around it, maybe why not us next year? But I just don't see that as that appealing of a destination. Next, Washington. Josh Harris, they have the right ownership in place that want to win. They do have some talent. They're drafting high enough that they're going to be taking a quarterback this year, and maybe that QB will sit for a year or two, at least maybe a year or 6 weeks behind Sam Howell. They have Robinson at running back, McLaurin and some other weapons at receiver. They lost both their defensive ends. They need to rebuild the defense. The defense is terrible. But on top of that, you're playing in a division with the Cowboys and Eagles. So unless both teams completely fall apart, you are probably going to be playing for third place in the division and the second or third wild card spot every year. Now, some people that want a head coach gig that don't care about that stuff, that think, I'll fix it. And you have to have an ego if you're a coach. You have to be pounding your chest and really believing you're going to turn it around. I just don't see that. It's not the same old Redskins it's definitely not the Redskins. It's not the same old Commanders under Dan Snyder. Different ownership group, different outlook, but I don't think that's a great position. Next, the Raiders. And hopefully this is something that Antonio Pierce comes back to, because I think the team really liked him. He gave them an identity, even when Josh Jacobs wasn't in the game. Zamir White was running the ball really well for him. Thank you, because he helped me win one league and come in second place in another fantasy league. Vegas is attractive. How attractive is Mark Davis as the owner? You need a quarterback. It's not Aiden O'Donnell. Who knows what they do with Jimmy G? They have Devontae Adams if they keep him. They have some pieces on defense. They're like a middle-of-the-road team right now. Chargers are going to get better, whoever they hire as a head coach, because they can't get any worse. And the Chiefs are always going to be the Chiefs. But I think the Raiders are better than those three previous openings: Carolina, Tennessee, and Washington. Patriots would be the next best opening. It's been filled. Gerard Mayo. So here's what's interesting, right? I mentioned the Rooney Rule in the Niners section about Steve Wilks. The Patriots did not interview anybody else. The succession plan for Belichick was Gerard Mayo becoming the head coach. And Gerard Mayo is African American. This was almost like I don't think reverse Rooney Rule is the right thing to say, but they just basically said, the hell with the Rooney Rule. We're going to interview an African-American candidate or a minority candidate, and we're going to hire him, and we're not going to interview anybody else. That's fine to do. And if that was the plan all along and they really feel highly about Gerard Mayo, that's great. Again, the Patriots are in a division clearly behind the Bills and the Dolphins. If the Jets get right with Aaron Rodgers, they'll be behind them as well. But I think this is a known rebuild. They do need pieces. I think they have ownership that's going to have patience. The one thing I do question is the Bill Belichick coaching tree, has not borne much fruit anywhere else in the league. What makes you think having a Belichick disciple in New England, not even going anywhere else, in New England, is going to turn that team around? You have questions at quarterback. It's certainly not Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. They should be drafting a quarterback, just a matter of, do they stay where they are? Could they get one? Do they trade down? But I think it's a very stable organization. It's a solid team from a team perspective and maybe what they want to carry over from what Belichick was doing. They need a lot of pieces, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a better spot than, the Raiders or the Commanders, etc. The Falcons. So Arthur Smith is gone. He was a curious hire anyway. He was the former offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. What remarkable offense of the Tennessee Titans would you have pointed to that you're like, I want Arthur Smith to be my head coach? Arthur Smith is the next innovative guy that could really revitalize my offense, my fan base, my team, my community. Again, like, not because he's coming from Tennessee, because I hold Mike Vrabel in very high regard, but Arthur Smith just felt like yeah, dude, you'll be fired in 3 years. And he was. Couldn't get Atlanta past, 7 wins all season. And they did not know what to do with the skill players they had between Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Bijan Robinson would just disappear at times. The defense was okay. They were basically playing 1960s football, running it as much as they can, and only throwing when they needed to, basically because they had Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder at quarterback. But either he had no clear vision or he was playing the cards that he was dealt to too fine a T. But I don't think Atlanta's a bad spot because they do have some talent. They are in a division with Carolina and New Orleans and Tampa Bay that if they get the right coach, and it's rumored that, not rumored, but Bill Belichick interviewed with the Falcons. That's a weird look to me for him, like to go into a situation where you don't have a quarterback. Belichick's in his early 70s. How much longer is he really going to be coaching for? Can he turn that team around in 2 or 3 years? Maybe to the point of being, a 10-7 division winner. But they have pieces, and they have an owner that'll spend. I'm not sure what the salary cap situation is with owner Arthur Blank. But appealing given what's there. Now, we don't think of the Falcons as a historically successful franchise, but I think looking at it in a vacuum and comparing it to the teams behind it that I mentioned, decent spot. Seahawks to me are number 2. Well-run organization. As much as I hate the team, hate the fan base, I liked Pete Carroll as a head coach. I mean, seeing someone in his 71, 72 having that much energy, he still surfs apparently. He's got a home in Hawaii. He's got a home in Manhattan Beach, California, Manhattan Beach, Kansas. It's a well-run organization. You have to figure out what you want to do with Geno Smith, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Njigba at receiver. You have two solid running backs. You have the pieces on defense, especially in the secondary. They can't stop the run. You need someone to come in there and fix that. Jim Harbaugh would be a great fit, but there's no way he's going to want to follow Pete Carroll. There's zero chance at all. They play in a division with the Niners. Obviously, the Rams took a step up, and they have some young talent, and the Cardinals, I think, are probably just going to be a 6 to 8 win team next year. But they have a lot of pieces. And I think this is a team maybe that needs a defensive-minded head coach with a very strong and innovative offensive coordinator. But that's number 2. And number 1 on the list, the Chargers. The most underachieving team since Justin Herbert has come into the league. They have weapons, and the weapons keep getting hurt, whether it's Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. They have some tight ends. They have players on defense. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James at safety in the secondary. They have players. Again, they're in a division with the Chiefs, and they play the Chiefs tough sometimes. In the past couple of years, they've split with the Chiefs during their season series. You got the quarterback. Who knows what they're going to do at running back with Eckler. You have weapons at receiver. You have talent. Brandon Staley was not the right one to fuse the talent together, to make the individual pieces greater. The sum should be greater than the parts, and Brandon Staley could not do that. Jim Harbaugh could. To me, a Mike Vrabel could. Belichick would be a good fit there too, because that team is on, I think, the same timeline as Belichick's age and coaching future in terms of being able to win. I mean, the biggest thing you need, right, is the quarterback. They have that. And I think Harbaugh already interviewed for the Chargers position. So we will see. I can imagine, unless people are hoping for a coordinator either on the Ravens, the Packers, the Niners, whatever, any of these playoff teams where you can interview, but you can't make a hire until the team is eliminated from the playoffs. Most of these head coaching vacancies will be filled in the next week or two. But let's move from NFL to Star Wars. I recently finished actually reading the book Star Wars Alliances by Timothy Zahn. This is book 2 in Timothy Zahn's first canon Thrawn trilogy. I didn't read the first book, Thrawn. I'm going to go back to that. The Alliances book was interesting to me because I'll explain the story. And then I've started listening to the third book in the trilogy, Thrawn Betrayal. And this book is essentially about Grand Admiral Thrawn, even before he was a Grand Admiral and just a commander for the Chiss Ascendancy, teaming up with both Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader at different points in time. So half of the movie takes place during the Clone Wars, where Thrawn and Anakin are kind of thrown together and meet. And they have, a common purpose. They have to go to a planet where, one, Padme Amidala has been kidnapped. So Anakin gets thrown to help him save her. But it's also a planet and a planetary system where aliens called the Grisk are starting to encroach on Chiss territory. And he gets Anakin to aid him with some of the preparations that Thrawn and the Chiss need to do in that area to hold the Grisk back. On the future part of the timeline, when Thrawn is a Grand Admiral for the Empire and Anakin Skywalker is now Darth Vader, Thrawn asks Vader's assistants to help him go back to that planet that they were on where Padme was captured and then saved, but now to fight these Chiss creatures. And it's interesting because you see Darth Vader's inner monologue of, Vader wasn't here, was never here, but the Jedi was. And he starts tapping into Anakin's memories of what happens. And just an interesting, obviously he's consumed with the dark side and evil and full of hate, etc. But he remembers back, and Timothy Zahn does a nice way of tapping into that. But the Grisk actually wound up kidnapping some Chiss people, and Thrawn wants to return them because he has a hunch, and he's right, that the Chiss that were captured were children, and they were Force-sensitive children having something called third sight, which allowed the Chiss to navigate through hyperspace. The Chiss weren't using computers, navicomputers like we've seen in Star Wars, the Empire and the Rebellion use. They actually use Force-sensitive Chiss who have this ability of precognition to, when you're in hyperspace, you can avoid a star or an asteroid field or whatever it may be. And the ironic thing about that is, when translated, the names of these people who have this Force ability are called Skywalkers. And at the end of the book, Thrawn realizes, he suspects it, but realizes that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. He doesn't really acknowledge it, but you can tell in some of the inner monologues of Thrawn that he has connected the dots. So Timothy Zahn, again, just one of the preeminent Star Wars authors, and he goes back to the character that he created in Grand Admiral Thrawn from the early 90s trilogy. And this is just a really fun book, seeing two iconic characters between Vader slash Anakin and Thrawn interacting in two different ways. You could read it as a standalone book. It doesn't really attach itself to the first book, at least from what I know. Although the third book does kind of follow up on this second book, Alliances. But if you're interested, I thought it was just a really good read. Sticking with Star Wars news, the next Star Wars movie has been announced, the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I really hope that's not the title, but this essentially, even though it hasn't been confirmed, will take the place of The Mandalorian Season 4. And this very well may be the next movie released. And Disney has 3 dates on the calendar to release 3 Star Wars movies. May 2026, or 2.5 years away, December 2026, and May 2027. It was always believed that the next movie to come out would be the supposed Episode 10 movie, bringing back Daisy Ridley as Rey, that they announced several months ago that Rey would be leading this new Jedi Order, and it would take place 15 years after the rise of Skywalker. Since it was announced, and now the Screen Actors Guild strike happened, so that stopped. Stephen Knight was brought in, who created the Showtime series Peaky Blinders, to write the screenplay. Once the strike happened, he had to stop, and there's been rumors online that Stephen Knight handed in a draft. Lucasfilm was not thrilled with it, and that there are creative differences, and that Stephen Knight may be on his way out. Depending on what source you read, it's either debunked or it's what they heard and what is happening. But either way, there might be, it takes a Herculean effort to get a Star Wars movie from nowadays, from pre-production to actually released. Things get canceled all the time, and just the rush and the increase in stock that Disney investors and board of directors gets when they have their earnings calls or beginning of the year, when they announce their slate of movies for next year and the year after, it makes Disney's stock go up and everybody gets excited. And then you cancel it down the road. But meanwhile, the stock went up. So who cares, right? That's essentially how Lucasfilm and Disney are doing this. But it's rumored that this Mandalorian and Grogu movie has been greenlit and moved up to this May 2026 spot because there are issues with this Episode 10 Rey movie. I cannot confirm nor deny that. It could kind of make sense. But if nothing else, I think making a Mandalorian movie makes sense for Disney because they're still laying off people, hundreds, thousands of people. I think they're laying off a bunch of Pixar people because Disney Plus still isn't profitable. And you keep pumping out Marvel shows or Star Wars shows, you're not getting the revenue that you would if it was a theatrical release. I'm not saying this is going to be a $2 billion movie. It may not even be a $1 billion movie, but it will make something. It will make something significant and substantial, and substantially more than whatever they would be generating if it was Mandalorian Season 4 on Disney+. Something else that was announced, Ahsoka Season 2 has been announced, which the fact that it was in limbo at all was kind of silly. The way they ended Season 1, it was begging for a Season 2. So I'm very glad that that has happened as well. But as I read about Star Wars stuff basically daily or nightly when I'm in bed, none of these rumors are going to be really confirmed true. But if there's anything that seems interesting, that is shaking up the calendar, or rumors, but it's an interesting rumor, I will share it because other than the next Avatar movie, and I even see Avatar 2 in the theaters, there's no other movie I'm looking forward to seeing in theaters than whatever the next Star Wars movie is going to be. And it looks like it's The Mandalorian and Grogu. On to the NFL. Let's finish up making divisional round picks. The first game on Saturday, the Texans are at the Ravens. Baltimore is a 9-point favorite. Ravens, the number 1 seed. Houston, the number 4 seed, who trounced Cleveland 45-14 in Houston last weekend. They were down 14-10 and scored the next 35 points, including 2 pick sixes of Joe Flacco. Stroud went for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. As a team, they only ran it 22 times for 76 yards and a score, but they also only allowed 20 rushes for 56 yards and 1 score, about 2.5 yards per carry. And that's going to be important, playing a Baltimore team who is number 1 running the football. They met in week 1. Baltimore won 25-9. It was a 7-6 Baltimore game at the half. Neither quarterback, neither team had a passing touchdown. Lamar was sacked 4 times. Stroud was sacked 5 times. And the Texans, run defense is, I think, like a top 7 unit. If they can control Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Lamar, when he breaks the pocket, they have secondary players, Stingley, you have Will Anderson rushing the passer, among others. I think they can keep it interesting. You can tell that D'Amico Ryans, Stroud, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick for the Texans, they're going to play bombs away. They have a wide open offense, but they can get dirty and run it when they need to with Devin Singletary, and I guess Dameon Pierce, if he's going to get more than 3 carries a game. They will commit to running on the ground when they have to. They don't have a fantastic offensive line outside of Laramie Tunsil, but their defense so much better than last year. I think they can give Baltimore some early issues, but I think Baltimore wins this game around what the spread is, but I will take the Ravens. The Niners and Packers are the night game on Saturday. We went over that. Sunday games, Tampa Bay at Detroit. The Lions are a 6.5-point favorite. Detroit beat the Rams at home 24-23 in the wild card round, their first playoff win in 30 years. Rams actually outgained the Lions by 90 yards. Neither team had a turnover. Stafford for the Rams, 367 and 2 scores. Goff, 277 and 1 score. The Lions that game, when they needed to get stops and hold the Rams to field goals, they did, which ultimately culminated in a 1-point victory. Now, Tampa Bay just ran roughshod over the Philadelphia Eagles 32-9 on Monday night. They had 150 more total yards, 10 more first downs, and an 8-minute advantage in time of possession. Baker Mayfield goes for 333 and 3 touchdowns. Tampa Bay, a team that has trouble running the ball, ran it 29 times for 119 yards, limited the Eagles on the ground. Eagles, I think DeAndre Swift only had 10 carries all game. The Eagles should have been the bigger, stronger bullies. They should have been able to push the Buccaneers around, but they did not commit the run at all. There was no run threat from Jalen Hurts. There's got to be something up with one of his knees. Obviously, his right finger was screwed up, dislocated. Threw a really nice deep ball to Devontae Smith, but I'm sure it hampered him during the game. Philadelphia quit. I don't know if it was after the Niner game or the Cowboy game, but Philadelphia quit, and we'll see if the Eagles are a head coaching opening again. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. Nick Sirianni may be fired by now. Who knows? But they absolutely quit. But credit Tampa Bay. It's not like they won by a field goal. They won by 23. And these teams, the Lions and the Buccaneers, played in week 5 in Tampa Bay. Detroit won 20-6. Relatively evenly matched game from a statistical standpoint. These teams are obviously different. Baker Mayfield playing with a whole lot of confidence, has weapons in Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton, White, the running back. They are going to blitz Goff mercilessly like they blitzed Jalen Hurts, and basically is Todd Bowles' philosophy, head coach Todd Bowles. That's his defensive philosophy. Can they turn Goff over? Can they get to Goff, cause a fumble, a strip sack, get an interception, a pick six? We'll see how, and I think that's probably the way to play Detroit. Detroit has a high octane offense. They have a good offensive line, so the Bucs probably aren't going to get there with just rushing 4. They don't rush 6 a ton. Seems like they rush, of anything, they rush 5 quite a bit. But if they can get Goff off and out of rhythm, limit St. Brown at receiver. Sam Laporta was played last week, which is good to see since he suffered a knee injury the last week of the season. Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery at running back for the Lions. The Lions have weapons. The issue with the Lions is they can be thrown on. And this game could turn into a shootout if the blitzes aren't getting home on Goff and if the Lions secondary cannot cover and stay with the weapons that the Bucs have. Now, all that being said, I think home field for the Lions here is so big. Now, granted, I don't know if home field made a difference for them in terms of the crowd or full starts or anything against the Rams, but I think first playoff win in 30 years, they're home against Tampa, against a team they beat, divisional round, 1 win away from the NFC Championship game, and who knows what happens with the Niner game. Niners lose and the Lions win, they could be hosting the NFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl. How crazy is that? I think the team, the city, the crowd, everybody is going to be juiced up for this game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think I would take the over, whatever it is. I don't have it here, but I would take the over. And I think Detroit winds up winning, again, around where the spread is, that 6.5, between maybe 5 and 7 points type of a thing. And last but not least, Kansas City at Buffalo. Bills are a 2.5-point favorite. KC beat Miami last weekend 26-7. They had 145 more yards, 12 more first downs, 8 more minutes of time of possession. Mahomes went for 262 and a touchdown, and they ran the ball, led by Isaiah Pacheco, 34 rushes for 147 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, I said it, I think, in the Niners section. Did anyone really think a warm weather team was going to go into Kansas City, a cold weather place, and win? This was a game they played once already in London. Kansas City beat them 21-14. There was no way. There's no way. And it's not a Tua thing. It's not a Mike McDaniel thing, Dolphin, anything. There was no way a warm weather team was going to win in those conditions. Plus, they were missing the Dolphins were missing both their starting defensive ends, multiple injuries on their defense. Vic Fangio did a great job patching everything together. during the season, but they were not going to win this game. That was the safest bet on the board last weekend with that kind of, in a normal game, maybe it's 35, 40 degrees out. All right, maybe KC wins, but it's a lot closer. The way that weather was, no chance. As for the Bills, beat the Steelers Monday night. Game moved from Sunday to Monday due to the ton of snow that they got. Buffalo wins at 31-17. Josh Allen goes for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns. Running the Bills, 34 rushes for 179 yards and a score. I think both Josh Allen and James Cook went over 70 yards rushing. And these teams played in Week 13 at Kansas City. Buffalo won 20-17. Kansas City had 2 turnovers to Buffalo's only 1. Buffalo had an 11-minute time of possession advantage. Both quarterbacks threw an interception. Buffalo ran the ball better, 28 times for 118 yards and a score. Kansas City, 18 for 82 and a touchdown. This is what, there are no detractors from the Chiefs. There are no detractors from Patrick Mahomes, but this is what the folks that are wondering, can Patrick Mahomes win an away game? And I don't think the conditions are going to faze him. You know how cold it is in Buffalo. It was colder in Kansas City last weekend, but we're talking hostile environment. First road playoff game for the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs. The Bills beat them once. They have them right where they want them. I think this game, you have 2 star quarterbacks who are probably, we're going to be watching the game saying, oh, look at that arm. I can't believe Josh Allen get away. Look at that off-schedule throw that Mahomes made. But I think this has the potential, outside of some, a handful of big plays by the quarterbacks, it's going to be an ugly, grounded out, pounded type of game. I mean, the Bills have gotten better when they've committed to running the ball with James Cook and taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands throwing. Because the less Josh Allen throws, the less chances he throws back-breaking interceptions. You don't have to worry about that with Mahomes. What you have to worry about is who's going to step up other than Kelsey and Rashee Rice, who had a really big game against the Dolphins. Maybe that's enough. Maybe Mahomes, Pacheco, Kelsey, and Rice is enough. But the game is going to be one in the trenches, on the ground. Who is going to run for more yardage? Who can turn the other team over? Is the pass rush going to be a factor for either team? I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's Buffalo's time, at least for this week, to beat Kansas City by 3. So that concludes the podcast for today. I want to thank you for listening. Like always, thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. This will be the only podcast for this week, but we will get back on the horn hopefully early next week. It could be Monday, could be Tuesday. Not sure yet, to recap all the damage from divisional round weekend, hopefully recapping a Niner win. If they don't, we'll obviously still have the podcasts weekly through the off season until we get back into maybe around the draft. We might do it a couple times a week, or free agency. But excited, best football weekend of the year. A lot of people say, I do believe that as well. 4 games that have, in different ways, are really interesting and hopefully exciting. Hopefully we get 4 good ones, well, 3 good ones and 1 Niner blowout would be nice. But until then, stay happy, healthy, and safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.